It is my pleasure to introduce our main speaker tonight, Arizona State Senator Kelli Ward. She represents Arizona's 5th district, legislative district. She was first elected in 2012, won re-election in 2014, and she is a champion of liberty. We are so pleased to have her here. You will all have a copy of the Liberty Survey that we gave her. Her answers are pretty darn good, I have to say. And we are very pleased to call her one of our own. And speaking of announcements, there was one announcement yesterday that was not such good news for us liberty lovers, and that is John McCain has said that he is running again for U.S. Senate. And that is one thing I'd like to start things out with. Kelli, what are your thoughts on that? Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me. I appreciate it. And what a great turnout. I love to be in a room full of liberty-loving Arizonans. So thank you guys so much for being here. Yeah, I will tell you, it is hard to be hobbled to this chair. I am a pacer. I like to talk and pace and walk around, and I'm on these crutches. I know I told several of you what happened. Really, I was down at the Capitol, and I have just been kicking a lot of butt down there, and you should see the other guy. But no, really what happened was I was running. I was training for the Pat Tillman run, and ran it last year. My husband Mike and I ran it last year, and even though I'm a doctor, you know, you would think that I would be one to say, hey, if it hurts, you should stop. So I was running, it hurt. I ran some more, it hurt. I ran some more, and then I finally couldn't even walk. And so then I was diagnosed with a stress fracture after walking around the Capitol for about 10, 12 days with no crutches, wincing every step, but nothing's going to keep me down. I can tell you that. Nothing's going to hold me back. I don't care. I'm going to use the crutches. I'm going to get strong arms. If my legs aren't strong, my arms are going to be strong, and I'm going to continue the fight. So I really, really appreciate you all having me here. I know some of you. I don't know all of you. So what my plan is to kind of just tell you a little bit about me, tell you some of the stuff that happened at the legislature this time, and then I will answer any questions, including the question I just posed to me about John McCain and what's happening with that. So a little bit about me. I'm Dr. Kelli Ward. I never used doctor before I ran for office. I will tell you that it was difficult to put that into my vernacular because, you know, whenever I see my patients, I would just say, hi, I'm Kelli. I'm going to be your doctor today. I'm going to take care of you, whatever. But we had a consultant, and the consultant said, well, people trust their doctor more than they trust their spouses. You must use doctor. So we started to use Dr. Kelli Ward. And I am a family physician, which means I know a little bit about a lot of things, and I think that it kind of actually fits very well for me in politics because just because I'm elected does not mean that I know everything. I know that there are a lot of people who are elected and they suddenly think that they're an expert on everything under the sun. Well, for me, I know that as a generalist in medicine and as a generalist in the political world, I know what I know, and I know when I need a consultant, and that's been one of my really important things that I've tried to do is create that network of consultants, not within the legislature, not among the other members, of course, because they aren't experts either. They have a few little areas of expertise, and not obviously among the lobbyist community. I wanted to create those experts in different areas, in education, in healthcare, in energy policy, in taxes, you know, in banking, all of those things in my district and throughout the state of Arizona. So when I need to reach out to someone, I reach out to someone who's actually an expert in the trenches. And I think that's because I'm a family physician, I had that skill already built in. Now, I do want to touch bases a little bit about the lobbyists because I mean, you guys have heard about lobbyists. Some of you are lobbyists. I don't know. Well, for me, I feel like I've always had lobbyists in my career as well as a physician. We have drug reps, pharmaceutical reps who come to our office who are beautiful people who have some great information, but they're always trying to sell you something. And I can tell you that the lobbyists down at the Capitol are exactly the same. They are beautiful people with good information who are trying to sell you something. For me, I'm used to having them in my life. I've been in medical practice for the last 16 years. They've always been around. I always have known what they're all about. I think some people get elected to office and they think that those lobbyists, who are beautiful people with good information, that they're actually their friends. And they let them influence them in ways that are beyond me. It was one of the most disappointing things that I saw when I got elected to office was the power of the lobbyists, because we represent about 219,000 people each down at the legislature, and you're going to let one person, most of the time who isn't even from your district, sometimes not even from our state, influence your precious vote that is supposed to be reserved for the people that you represent. And so I've made very, very certain that that doesn't happen with me, and I try when I see other people being influenced unduly that way to let them know that they're not really your friends. They shouldn't have that much influence on over you, and you need to really get in touch with your constituents so that you know how you should be voting. So a little bit more about me. Now, I'm not only a doctor. My favorite hats that I wear are those of wife and mother. I've been married to Mike. This will be 20 years. In July, we'll be married for 20 years. That's him right there. Wave your hand, baby. And Mike is my support system, my best friend, my confidant, the guy that we bounce things off of each other all the time. We had a big RV that we drove around when I was running for office the first time, a giant RV with my face on the side, which was a little disturbing the first time I saw it, I can tell you. But it was a great tool, because one of the things that I had that I was short on was name recognition in my district, because I'd never run for office. I never thought I was going to be in politics. And so he drove the heck out of that thing. It was a 1987 Pace Arrow, though. Remember, it had a very pretty face, but on the inside it was not too nice. It didn't have good air conditioning in the front. We had fans set up everywhere to try to, cool us down as we're driving in July and August all across Legislative District 5, which is Mojave County and La Paz County, so northwest Arizona. And I could never do what I do without him. That is definitely for sure. We have 3 kids. We have Nick, Katie, and Cameron. I used to say that it was Nick, Katie, and Cameron, but now they're all bigger than I am. Nick's 21. He's my stepson. Katie's 19. She's at Barrett over here studying history, wants to study politics and poli-sci as well, and maybe be a lawyer. We don't have any lawyers in the family. We got a lot of doctors, but we don't have any lawyers, so we'll see. And then we have Cameron. He's 17. He's still at home with us. He's in high school. We've been struggling through the education system with him as we try to get him to finish. We've tried multiple things. He's now in online school, and he seems to be liking that a lot. He was in the public school at the high school. He went to a little Christian school from kindergarten basically through 8th grade, and then he went to the high school. And just since he got into the high school, it was a struggle. The whole education system has been really a struggle for him, and I've seen some of his friends as well struggling through that system that doesn't seem to me to be encouraging innovation and learning and creativity and inspiring a love of learning. It's more like drudgery every day, and I feel like I'm glad that in Arizona we have so much school choice that we're able to do homeschool or online school or private school or charter school or public school. So it's good that people can find what is the right thing for them. But they're at home now. We have kind of a Ward compound at our house, the Ward compound, because my parents live with us. My mom and my stepdad live with us in our house, and my in-laws we have a little guest casita, and they live in the guest casita. And so we have both sets of parents there with us, and people always say, well, how do you deal with that? How do you have your parents? We love having our parents there. It's our kids are so blessed to be able to grow up with such a big family right around them. They don't only know their grandparents once or twice a year. They know them every single day. So because of that, that family atmosphere is very, very important to me in everything that I do. I never would have run for office the first time if I didn't have the support of my family, and I would never do it into the future as well, especially if I were to run for a bigger office at some point where there's going to be a tax on everyone, not just on me, but on all of my family are going to be subject to some pretty harsh things if I decide to jump into that race. So people say, why as a doctor did you decide to get into politics? What the heck? Why didn't you just keep on practicing? I'm a family doctor. I worked I had my own private practice, so built a small business with my mom. She's a pediatrician, and so we had that practice for about 10 years. But I will tell you that the last 2 years of that practice, it was very difficult to survive with the low reimbursement and the increased regulation from the government. And so the last 2 years, I basically had a very expensive, litigious hobby that I loved very much, but I wasn't really making a lot of money. I just lived off Mike, and he was fine with that. But that's actually how we figured out I could run for office, was that we could just live off of his income, so I could run for office and be able to be a public servant. So the thing that finally pushed me over the edge to run for office, for political office, real office, was Obamacare. Now, before that, I really, before the turning point for me in terms of figuring out that politics even existed, I see so many young people out here, and it's amazing for me to know that you guys are already engaged politically. It took me a little bit longer. It took me until September 11th. And September 11, 2001 was a big turning point for me, because as I'm sure that you all can picture where you were and what you were doing when those planes hit the towers. And I still can see it. And I was just thinking, what is happening? What's happening in our world? What's happening in our country that could allow something like that to happen? Katie was a little kid. The kids were little, but Katie came in and she's like, "Mommy, why does this happen over and over again? What's happening? Why is it happening?" We had to tear ourselves away from the TV and say, "Oh my gosh, the world that we've been so blessed to grow up in is going to be so much different for our kids." And, what's going on? Well, so that day I had to start reading different things, learning, basically educating myself, listening to different radio shows, not watching the Today Show every morning, cutting out coupons and reading fiction books. I had to kind of change what was going on. And the more I learned, the more educated I became, the higher my expectations became for the people who represent me. And I will tell you that, so I started to write letters and write emails and make phone calls, and most of the time I would be disappointed in what I got back, which was generally nothing. How many of you guys have written or called and gotten nothing? Yeah, see, some of you. And every now and then I'd get a form letter. How many people got a form letter? Yeah, about the border, or about the taxes, or about why they couldn't do something that you wanted them to do. Lots of form letters. And every now and then something personal would come back. And I just, I was like, why doesn't somebody do something? Why doesn't somebody do something? Finally I said, why don't I do something? I've got skills, I've got talents, I've got abilities. I've been blessed with a lot of things. And why am I hoarding them to my family or to my patient population? Maybe there's something that I could offer on a bigger scale. And that's how I decided to run for office. I was down at the Capitol. Mike and I were actually involved in medical politics, which are a lot different than big politics, but medical politics from the time we were medical students. We actually met in a medical student organization. He was in school in Kirksville, Missouri. I was in school in Lewisburg, West Virginia. So we would have never met if it weren't for student politics. So I'm very grateful for that. But we were down and we were talking to our senator, who was termed out, because you all know we have term limits in Arizona. So he was termed out, and we were kind of talking about how maybe I would run for office. I might run for the House, because there's 2 chances to get in, and you want to be successful whenever you run for office, and you think, wow, 2 chances are better than 1. Well, our senator was termed out of his seat. He said, you need to have some testosterone, but he said it a little bit differently than that. You have some testosterone, and you need to run for the Senate. Right at that point, there were 2 very liberal, progressive doctors that were on the House side who had become the voice for medicine for the other legislators, for the lobbyists, and for the community as a whole. They wanted big government, they wanted single-payer health care, and they were going to do everything they could do to get it. And he said, we need to have a voice, a conservative voice for medicine, and we need them on the Senate side, so run for the Senate. And that's what put me on the path to run for the Senate instead of for the House. And somehow I was able to be victorious, even despite my own consultant telling me basically the whole race that I was going to lose. He's like, you're going to lose, you should go in the House race, get out, get out, get out. But I was able to be successful against a presumed incumbent. Our rep at that time was termed out, and she had served her 8 years. And so I was trying to take her seat because, obviously it was her seat. She had done her 8 years of time in the House, so she should have been able to come right over. And then we had a gun shop owner that was also running, which in Mojave County, as in many counties in Arizona, is like being a god. And so I had those 2 that I was running against, but I was able to be victorious over them, 9 points over the gun shop guy and 18 points over the presumed incumbent. So then I got to hit the ground running and get to work at the legislature. And the last time I ran, no one ran against me, which is good. So I didn't have a primary or a general, which was very nice, and I appreciate that because I must have been doing what the people who elected me wanted me to do. This year, it's been pretty busy at the legislature, even though it was the shortest session on record in many, many years. I think since man landed on the moon, we got finished in 81 days. I think the first year, it was 154 days. Last year, I think it was 124 days. So this year, at 81 days, it's been great. We had to do some tough things while we were down there this time. The governor and leadership and all of the conservative members wanted to have a conservative budget. And it did not make us popular with many people. It didn't make us popular, obviously, with the education community. But it had to be done. Over the last 8 years at least, maybe even before that, but I know through Napolitano and Brewer, we were telling people, or they were telling people, that the revenue was going to be up here. And we were overestimating what the revenue would be, and then we were spending as though we had it. And so Governor Ducey, I think because he's a business guy, he realized that we cannot continue to lie to the people. We cannot continue to spend money that we don't have, and we need to decrease that revenue forecast to a more realistic level, and then we are going to have to figure out how to make up that difference. We were in the hole pretty significantly, and so we did have to make some cuts. But those cuts are going to enable us in 1 or 2 years. I think the economy is going to continue to improve, to be on firm financial footing so that we in Arizona can be proactive rather than reactive when things are thrown at us. And we're going to be not a flyover state where people leave California and fly over to Texas to start businesses. They're going to come right here because I think Arizona is definitely open for business and is ready to compete on all levels. So that was hard. We had I mentioned education. K-12 education was pretty upset because they kept saying that we made cuts, but I will tell you guys that there were not cuts. There were actually increases in K-12 education. Now, they were small, and they were not as much as they would have liked to have seen, but they did get increases in their budget when other people actually got cuts for real cuts. Yeah, like you, like my husband. He wants me to tell you because there is a 5% cut to Medicaid providers, hospitals and physicians and other people who provide services. So there is going to be a real cut in that. But in K-12 education, there was not a cut. We actually increased $102 million next year and $185 million the year after that. We did make some cuts to higher ed. You may have heard about them. They've been trumpeted all over the place. We cut them by $99 million, which is pretty significant. But you also have to remember that they got $600 million. They got 7% of the budget. They got $600 million. And even with those cuts, they still are planning to spend $4.79 billion with a B next year and $4.84 billion with a B the year after that. So there is money there. Now, they keep threatening that we're going to have tuition increases. There's going to be tuition increases, and that's not fair to our students. Well, you also have to remember that at our state institutions, about 50% of the students who attend do not pay any tuition. And these are not academic scholars, and they are not sports scholars. They are just people that the university decides it's just too hard for them to pay, so we're going to let them come for free. 25% of the kids get a subsidy as well. So the top 25%, middle class and above, are the ones where they keep increasing the tuition and have to bear the brunt of the redistribution of that money. They're the ones that are going into the hole before they even get started in their lives. And so I would like to see our state universities be a little bit more forthcoming on that, and also say everybody could pay a little bit. I'm not saying that the 50% that they want to give for free should have to pay 100% of the tuition, but have them pay $500 a semester or $1,000 a semester. They could take out a little bit of loans as well to ease the burden on these other students who are taking out tens of thousands of dollars in student loans. And so that was a tough part of the budget because it didn't make us popular, I will tell you. It made us the objects of scorn and ridicule and harassment all through the end, really right down to the last hour that we were there. We were being attacked because we wanted to balance that budget and we wanted to be fiscally responsible. But I think down the road it's going to pay in spades for all of us. It's going to pay in Bitcoin for all of us. No, I don't know. So some of the things that I was proud to be involved with this year, of course, the photo radar ban bill. I was very, very proud to be the sponsor of that bill. We were able to get that through the Senate. We were, through the Senate committees, through the full Senate. Then it got to the House, and they weren't going to hear it. they said no. Well, the full Senate actually, we had a few people who kind of were turncoats that said they were going to vote yes and voted no, and everybody knows who they are because I got a roll call vote. So you guys can keep on all of those people. So since we didn't get it through the full Senate, I had a striker over in the House that wasn't, one of my bills wasn't going to move, and so I struck it on, put it in a committee that was supposed to be friendly. And by the time it got to the committee, two of our Republican friends who really are conservative and love the Constitution, I don't know how they got so sidetracked and so misled. By lobbyists, you're right. They drank the photo radar company Kool-Aid, I think. It was Representative Townsend and Representative Thorpe that voted against it in committee with the Democrats. And so it was sad because I do think that they love the Constitution. I just think that for some reason they got misled. So that one failed. It was disappointing, but I was glad to sponsor it. It got farther than it ever has before. All right, so that's one. I was happy to sponsor the Arizona beer bill, which I'm having a kilt lifter to celebrate. It's that there was a move to actually from some of our wine and spirits distributors. There were 3 of them that wanted to basically quit allowing our microbreweries to be as successful as they have been. Now, microbreweries have been one of the few industries that's been able to thrive throughout the recession, and they grew between 15% and 18% per year over the last decade. And so these 3 wine and spirits distributors were basically said, they wanted to say, hey, you guys are producing too much, you're getting too successful, and because you're too successful, you need to get rid of your restaurants, you need to get rid of your retail, and you just need to make beer, and that's it. And I just think that's ridiculous. How can anybody be too successful? No one can be too successful. So we fought hard against that, and we were able to increase the amount of beer that they're able to produce. We're able to keep their restaurants, keep their retail, and it was very, very successful. And bring really both sides together. It was a bipartisan effort and a bi-House and Senate effort. And then the governor was right on board from the beginning because the governor's very supportive of supporting our small businesses and allowing entrepreneurs to be successful. So I was happy for that as well. I got a couple of accountability measures which are near and dear to my heart in our Medicaid system. I will tell you that sometimes people, I think that I make up the stories about what I see when I'm working in the ER. I love that I'm still working. I still work in the emergency department in Kingman and Lake Havasu so that I can keep my medical mind sharp while I'm down at the legislature serving. And I said there's good, bad, and ugly in the healthcare. There's a little bit of good, but mostly there's bad and ugly in the newfangled healthcare system that President Obama has thrust upon us. And so with Medicaid expansion, I was opposed to Medicaid expansion. I think that it's the biggest expansion of an entitlement program that I will see in my lifetime and that probably you will see in your lifetimes as well. I think it's going to be bigger than Medicare ever was, the issues with Medicaid expansion and Obamacare in general. And so, but the federal government doesn't allow us to have any kind of accountability for the people that are utilizing those services. So if someone's on Medicaid and they are getting using the taxpayer dollar to pay for their health care, there's no accountability measures that we can have on them. But in Arizona, the way we do things is we pay healthcare companies to provide those services. So I put accountability measures on the healthcare companies so that they can put them on the people that they serve. 2 things, you guys wouldn't believe, but we see people who take an ambulance to the emergency room to get a medication refill. Okay, I also think in Kingman they might take the ambulance to get to Walmart because it's right across the street. But they use the ambulance services inappropriately and excessively, as well as the emergency department inappropriately and excessively. And so if they do that now, the healthcare plans have to intervene to try to teach them how to appropriately use the system, and hopefully we'll be able to save money. We also have a big problem with prescription drug abuse in Arizona and in my part of the woods, my neck of the woods. even more. In Arizona, we prescribe enough medication to medicate fully around the clock every adult patient for 2 weeks. In Mojave County, we prescribe enough medication every year to to medicate every adult person around the clock for 4 weeks. And so I put some accountability measures in terms of the controlled substance use. If people excessively use controlled substances from multiple prescribers and multiple pharmacies, then the health plans need to intervene and find out what the heck's happening. So those were also important because I do want to save money for the taxpayer. If I wasn't able to stop Medicaid expansion, at least I can try to put that little bit of a stopgap in to save all of our pocketbooks a little bit of money. So that's pretty much a little mini wrap up of what's been happening at the session, during the session. I'm finally getting to your question. I'll finally get to your question. There's been rumors circulating, but they're not really rumors. Am I considering a run against John McCain in 2016? The rumors are in fact true. I am considering that run. Thank you. I will tell you, I'm in the testing the waters phase, up until the end of the legislative session. During the legislative session, we as legislators are not allowed really to raise money. And so I didn't want to try to raise any money. I didn't want there to be anything that looked untoward, that I was doing something that I shouldn't do. But now that the session's over, I can start to raise money to see if there's a financial path to success. I need a political path and a financial path to come together to show that there could be a victory in it. I don't really want to be a sacrificial lamb that's out there for John McCain to just come to slaughter. I want to give it a good fight if I decide to do it. I think that there is huge grassroots support out there. I will tell you, I've just been humbled by the outpouring of people telling me, run, 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 you have to do it. We need somebody, we need somebody to do it. We need somebody who wants a small government, who wants less regulation, who wants lower taxes, who wants personal responsibility, who supports our Constitution and will uphold it at every turn. So we need someone, people are just crying out for something like that. And so I am seriously considering it. I think that John McCain and really nobody at the Senate level has faced a challenger like I would be if I were challenging. I'm well-educated, well-spoken, Constitution-loving, liberty-loving woman, and I don't think that most people have. Thank you. So I'm out there, I'm actively exploring, and I would appreciate all of your support, both financial, prayers, time, anything, because if I decide to do this, I will need all the help I can get from every corner of the world, every corner of this state and across the United States as well. So I welcome any questions. I hope you guys will keep in touch with me. I'm very accessible. I think that one of the important parts of doing the job that I do is two-way communication between the elected official and the people that they represent. It shouldn't just be a proclamation from the elected official and then you all just, bow down and say, oh yes, we love that. It has to be a two-way conversation about what the issues are that are important to you that I can work on to make better. And that's how we got to the photo radar bill. That's how we got to the Restoration of Rights bill. I was very disappointed that my Fourth Amendment Protection Act and my Second Amendment Protection Act, again, were thwarted. We were able to get the Second Amendment Protection Act through the whole Senate, and then in the House rules, they held it up, and they kept telling me, we're going to amend it, and then nobody would amend it, and they just finally said, nope, we're not letting it out. Fourth Amendment Protection Act, I couldn't get it out of one of the committees. Senator Kavanaugh was the chairperson. It went through one committee in the Senate, but he refused to hear it. And so, I'll continue to fight for our Second Amendment rights. I will continue to fight for our right to privacy and our Fourth Amendment rights, also our First Amendment rights as well. So don't worry, I'm there fighting for the Constitution at every turn. So any questions?